Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited because I have Shannon here from Shannon's Bookish Musings and Music, and we're here to discuss Bunny by Mona Awad. And this was a Black Hearts Book Club pick. And so we actually finished this one pretty quickly. I think most people in the group actually finished it maybe like the first week of August. So we've been done with the book for a while. So this should make for an interesting discussion because we've had kind of time to ruminate on it and also probably forget some things.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess I'll start out, Shannon, by asking what your overall impressions of the book were, and if you do a rating system, like what you would rate the book.
I don't usually rate, but I would say it's somewhere around 3 or 4 out of 5 for me. But I don't usually rate because I find it's too variable, and I don't know. But I wouldn't give it a 5, but 3.5, maybe 4. How about you?
I don't typically rate books either. I've kind of gotten away from that just because, like you said, it's so many variables, and especially when you're talking about different genres, it's really difficult for me to, go from rating like a nonfiction book to then rating a fiction book. And then, of course, it's so subjective because you have personal favorites and genres. And so I don't know. It's like when you get down to it and you say, okay, well, this classic I say is a 5, but this,
exactly
romance I say is a 5. It's
like comparing apples and oranges and bananas, and how do you compare them? So
exactly.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed reading this book. It was definitely a wild ride for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
It was very unsettling for sure. And I don't really know how to classify this book because it is definitely dark academia, but there was some comedy in it for me. I felt like some of it was
satire.
comedic.
I think
Satire for sure. There was some even a little bit of horror, I guess you could say.
Fairy tale, kind of fantasy-ish, kind of.
Yeah.
Is kind of the main character's fantasy kind of ideal friends and whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely a bunch of different genres mixed in there,
which I
think was intentional for sure.
Few people popping in, and actually one that was in the book club with us. So Cape Codder said overall it was good, but the ending was strange.
Yeah, definitely. Was unexpected.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess for those of you who have not read this book, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. The main character in this book, her name is Samantha, and she is a scholarship student at a graduate program for writing, novel writing. And she's at this very prestigious, very elite New England university. And so it's very cliquish, almost cultish, we'll see. Yeah. And we see her get wrapped up in this group of girls called the Bunnies. And they call each other Bunny all the time. They have this kind of hive mentality. And at the start of the book, Samantha's on the outside looking in, but we see that she gets wrapped up in this. And things take a dark turn, for sure. Yeah. For sure. So we find out that these bunnies are involved in some pretty weird stuff. And I don't want to spoil anything. When we start getting into spoilers, I'll let everyone know.
Weird is definitely one word for it.
But definitely weird. Got Lady Jane in here and Mark. Hello, Mark. Poor Mark. He couldn't get on board with this. He was like, this is too weird. This is too weird for me. And I totally respect that. I totally respect that because it was weird.
Absolutely.
And I guess one of the things for me that was kind of interesting is the university that she attends. It's all about this experimentalism with their writing and their creativity. So to me, this novel was really just that.
Yep.
It was very experimental.
Yep.
Have you ever read anything like this, Shannon?
No, nothing like this. I mean, this was totally not what I expected. I mean, well, we won't talk about what happens with the bunnies, but that whole thing was very, like, not what I was expecting from this. It was interesting for sure and entertaining, but it was totally not what I thought it was going to be. And I've never read anything like this before. No.
I think I have to agree with that. I've read some weird stuff, and I'm not opposed to something that is, kind of out there, kind of psychedelic, kind of like a trippy sort of read. I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah, like an Alice in Wonderland almost.
Yeah, but this one was definitely more than I think some of us bargained for. Got some other folks in there. The Grape Jelly Library.
Hello, Flossie.
And Jane. Jane, Mark. Well, I guess Mark can't really contribute because he jumped ship pretty early in this. He just said it was too weird, which I totally get. But Jane, I know you probably have some thoughts. So at any point during our discussion, if you want to jump in with your thoughts, please feel free to do so. We'll pop them on the screen and definitely talk about those. So Shannon, were there any characters in this that stuck out to you or that you particularly liked?
Yeah, Ava. I really liked Ava. And actually I wanted to see more of her because she was kind of gone for part of it in the middle there, but I really enjoyed her character. I feel like she's like this friend that we all kind of want to have. Like, she's fun, she's supportive, she's kind of motherly and protective, and all of these things that I think Samantha wanted and needed. And she was my favorite. How about you?
I actually really liked. Sorry, I'm having to readjust here. I actually really liked Jonah.
Okay, yeah.
And I thought he was almost too normal for this university. I just thought he's just a nice guy and he doesn't belong
with these weirdos.
in this, carnival fun house that they're calling a university. Because it was just, it was out there. I mean, the assignments, the professors, everything at this school was just very out there. For sure. And he just kind of rolls with it. He's just kind of like steady, a constant character. And I feel like he was the only character in the book that was really constant. Like, you kind of knew what to expect from him. Even with Ava, and I enjoyed Ava's character, but even with Ava, she's very unpredictable. And you really don't know what to expect from her either. With Jonah, I wanted him to get a little more recognition, I guess, as being a good friend, because I feel like he could have been a good friend to Samantha had she really let him in.
Yeah. And I think she was just too wrapped up in her own little world of, this whirlwind that she was in to really let him in.
For sure. What did you think of Samantha as a narrator? Did you feel like from the beginning she was a reliable narrator? Were you suspicious of her in any way?
I wasn't until the first workshop, the out of school workshop that they had with the bunnies. And when that whole thing started, I thought, okay, this can't be real. Like, this can't be what's happening. She must be unreliable, right? And at that point, I started to kind of suspect everything that she was saying or seeing. But up until then, I just thought, whatever she says that's what's happening. And then all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, what did I just read? What was that, right? Like,
that was pretty crazy. So without going into too much detail,
Mm-hmm.
the bunnies are having their own like unorthodox sort of workshop.
Yeah.
We'll say.
Yeah. Workshop.
um,
Ritualistic kind of workshop.
ritualistic, yeah. There will be blood, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely
Yeah.
when those sorts of things started happening, I was very concerned about her as a narrator.
Yeah.
And you know, you start wondering, is she going mad? You know,
Right.
is this some sort of mental illness that she's
Mm-hmm.
suffering from? You know, because she does suffer from, I think, depression at some
Depression. Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And you know, she's very lonely. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you get to the end
Mm-hmm.
and what's revealed is revealed, you
Mm-hmm.
know, with that in mind, the fact that she was so lonely and she was considered an outsider, some of it kind of makes sense to
Yeah.
me, that
Yeah.
she would do these things and that some of these things may, you know, be part of her creation.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
the encounters with the bunnies and kind of how the bunnies were was kind of funny to me sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Did that, I guess, that sort of hive mentality or how the bunnies were, have you ever experienced something like that in your own life? Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
seen anything similar
Mm-hmm.
to that?
Similar, but I mean, not as drastic. But yeah, definitely in school. I mean, in high school even, there was this clique of girls who I thought were like the cool girls, right? And I wasn't one of them. And they used to stand in the hallway against the radiator. They called themselves the Radiator Girls. They still call themselves that.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so they weren't bunnies, but you know, and I used to be afraid to walk down the hallway past them because I thought, oh, they're going to be like talking about me or, you know, whispering or whatever. And all these years later, after high school, I actually mentioned that to one of them one time on Facebook. And she's like, what? She said, no, like I want it to be you. Like we weren't making fun, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that's even part of what the book is that you can really misinterpret people and their motives and actions and criticisms and that sort of thing when you're on the outside looking in and you assume things that maybe aren't what this clique is doing at all, right?
Right. Yeah, a lot of it's in our mind, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. And I think that played out well in this as well.
Hey Noah, good to see you, man. This book, I don't know if you've read this one, Noah, but you might like it.
Yeah.
It is out there. It
It's
is
out
very
there.
experimental for sure in what
Mm-hmm.
she's trying to do. Um, I do feel like this book is about the creative process. Like I feel
Yeah.
like what it's trying to say is something about how, you know, authors, how artists, you know, how creative people sometimes operate and maybe how they think.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that? And have you ever met anyone who's had kind of a different sort of creative process? I'm sure, because I know you have a lot of experience in the music industry. I'm sure you have met all sorts of people, and you don't have to reveal any names
Yeah.
or anything, but just, you know,
Yeah.
if you know of like different creative processes that you thought were kind of like, that's kind of different, you know?
I think in the music industry particularly, but probably also with a lot of actors and just artists in general and writers, I think a lot of times alcohol or drugs play a part in the creative process. I certainly saw that, have seen it, have heard about it with other people, and I think that this was shown in this book as well, that they were giving her these Tic Tacs. And I mean, obviously they weren't Tic Tacs, right? So,
Right.
and how much did that affect what she was thinking as well? But I definitely think, yeah, part of the creative process for a lot of artists is sort of getting into that zone where reality is gone and your real life is gone and you're just focused in on what it is you're working on. And people get there in different ways. Meditation could be a way, or, you know, alcohol, drugs, whatever. But certainly people have different ways of getting into that headspace. And yeah, I think that this sort of speaks to that quite a bit as well, this book.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, you know, something else that kind of stuck out to me is the fact that Samantha is a scholarship student. So she has nothing, you know, she's living in this apartment that is not in a good part of town. You know, she's got this peeping Tom, you know, guy who's hanging out on the fire escape, like looking in her window and being super weird. And she has like nothing in her refrigerator. And then you have the other people at this elite university who are extremely wealthy. And of course, that's like the bunnies. And, you know, sometimes it's interesting because, you know, creativity can take any form and anyone, you know, can be creative. But sometimes I feel like that sort of struggle and people coming from nothing, that does kind of, in some ways, help their creative process. It helps them achieve success. And so I thought that was interesting to reflect on, because it's almost like the bunnies and the people at the university who had everything and they had all the comforts and they didn't have to worry about, you know, not being able to come back to school because they couldn't afford it, anything like that. You know, they had to kind of create these scenarios that were scary or, you know, prompted some sort of reaction in themselves, some sort of sense of urgency. Whereas with Samantha, you know, she doesn't have to create those scenarios because she's living out those scenarios. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too. And I liked that, the fact that they kind of showed both sides of that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and there's something to be said for cliches like, you know, it'll build character when you go through hard times. And so building character helps you to be more creative because you've experienced more, you have more to say and more, you know, it's just, I think that the bunnies were so sheltered growing up that they hadn't really experienced anything. So they had to create their own experiences.
Definitely interesting. What did you think about the writing in this book?
I liked it. I liked the writing. I think at first, I'm trying to think back because it's been a while, but I think at the very beginning, I was having a little trouble kind of getting into it for like the first few pages. And then I kind of got like the rhythm of the voice kind of thing. Yeah. And after that, I liked it. What did you think?
So Cape Codder, he's piggybacking off of what you said there. Yeah, she did have writer's block until she started hanging out with the bunnies and taking the mysterious Tic Tacs.
Exactly. Yeah.
I really liked the writing style. It was very interesting to me because the author paints a great picture of the bunnies' lifestyle and kind of this cultish group. And you could almost taste the sickening sweet, you know, ness in your mouth from just talking about their interactions and how they spoke and the fact that they would go to this particular diner to eat these little miniature cupcakes, you know. Sorry, there's like a helicopter flying above. Sounds like
somebody's growling, like a bunny's growling behind you.
So yeah, I liked that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna wait till the helicopter passes. So I did like that. That style of writing was pretty interesting to me, because even though it's very descriptive, the characters were kind of anonymous. You know, we talked about this a lot in the group, the fact that even though the writing style was very descriptive, the bunnies were interchangeable. You know, we couldn't remember who was who. I mean,
exactly.
And it really, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, it really didn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That at one point I was thinking, okay, I can't remember who's who, and then at some point I thought, well, it doesn't matter because they're all the same. They're all these bunnies. It doesn't matter who's saying what because they're the same. But what I thought was interesting, after I finished it, I watched an interview that Mona Awad did, and she was talking about how she thought they were all so different, and this one was her favorite, and one had silver hair, and I don't even remember the silver hair. Like, I couldn't tell you what any of them looked like at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't either. I mean, I remember that Samantha had different nicknames for them, and I think she called one of them Cupcake.
Yep.
Because she dressed like super cute and
the Duchess,
with the pinks and that sort of thing. But I can't really remember the distinct characteristics of them at all.
No, me either.
So that's interesting that she talked about how distinct they were.
Yeah.
Yet I think everyone in the group, when we read this, we all kind of agreed on this point that they were interchangeable.
Yeah.
And that that was kind of the point, I guess, that it was this cultish, hive-ish sort of mentality. That it was all about the group and not necessarily the individuals.
Right.
What did you think this book had to say about female friendships?
I think it was kind of a satirical take on the realities that a lot of us have experienced with female friendship, particularly when you're younger and in school. I think girls can be really mean to each other a lot of times, and there are cliques and there are outsiders, and I think that it showed kind of a realistic portrait of what happens a lot of times in school with groups of girls.
Yeah, I agree. At one point in the book, it talked about, and I think I actually tabbed this part because I was like, oh, wow, that's super interesting. It talked about the gossip glow. So it's basically like just glow and this excitement and this good feeling that was prompted among the group by gossiping about people. And I definitely think as a woman and, having guy friends, having female friends, I would definitely say females are more prone to that in my experience. For sure. I was a history teacher for 10 years and I worked with all guys in the history department and I loved it. And I would tell them a lot. I'm like, there's no drama.
Right.
Like we work together, we have fun. Now guys have their own thing because we like to razz each other a lot and like, but it's all in good fun. But it's different. Like
it is.
Sometimes with groups of girls, and especially when you're younger, high school, and then sometimes in college as well. This idea of kind of if you're with us, and if you're not, like you're kind of fair game to gossip about, and it's a way to kind of build yourself up and I guess make you feel better. But that was one. I didn't tab much, but that was one part that I did tab because I was like, oh wow, that's a weird way to explain it, but I've actually seen that. I've seen people get super excited, and I think we've all been guilty of gossiping and like talking about things that were either not true or you didn't really know if they were true, and
speculating.
But I think some people kind of take it to a different level. Like they love being the bearer of unfortunate news.
Absolutely.
And so, it was easy to visualize this group of women.
And I've even seen it in adults, like in offices. when you have a bunch of women working in an office, it happens there too. Like they're gossiping about each other, and it's like high school.
Yeah, it's
and with
it's
men,
interesting
you don't get that with men. Like men are more like, whatever, I don't care what they did.
Right. Yeah, my husband's always like, if you're not supposed to tell me, don't tell me. Like when someone says, did you hear? And he'll go, if you're not supposed to tell me, don't tell me. Like he doesn't want to know. Like I don't want to know. I don't, and yeah, sometimes that's the best, I guess, best policy, just to stop it before you even get into it. What do you think of the, and I guess I should tell everyone, we're probably going to get into some spoilers now, so if you've not read the book and you want to read the book, you should probably dip out. Because I don't think we can really talk about this much more without revealing some of the things that happened. But what did you think the purpose was behind blurring the boundaries of reality in this story?
I thought about that, and I'm really not sure what the purpose was, other than to keep the reader guessing and to leave it so that we're like, even at the end, not quite sure what was real and what wasn't. And so then we have to use our own imagination to kind of draw conclusions. And so I think it's a book about like the imagination and how dangerous that can be if you stay in your imagination and reality just kind of drifts away, like is what happened with Samantha. And then reading the book, we kind of have to use our own imaginations to figure out really what was happening. I don't know if that's the purpose of it, but
yeah, I'll kind of go with that. I feel like it's definitely an experimental type of novel, the way it kind of leaves it on you to sort of sift through what happened and try to figure it out, because we were kind of in the group just trying to figure out like what just happened. Like at the end, I think we were all kind of like, okay, now how do I piece all of that together? For me, I guess I keep coming back to sort of like a carnival atmosphere, and I don't know why, but like, with the bunnies, you get like the fun, like the cotton candy, the sweet. And then with all of these weird things that are happening, it's kind of like the fun house. It's kind of like the creepy part of the carnival where you're like getting lost. And, there's kind of a look behind the curtain, I guess, in this book. I don't know. That's just kind of the vibe. I don't know. I kept coming back to a carnival. I'm like, I just felt like I was on a carnival ride, and I didn't really know what was going to happen, and I had no idea what was going on. But it was fun. It was fun to read, for sure.
And something that I think is interesting is Mona Awad said in the interview that I watched, she said she did her dissertation on fairy tales and the fear within fairy tales, and that when she wrote this, that's kind of where her mind was. So I think that's interesting that you're picking up like a carnival type thing, which is, not that different from a fairy tale where there's stuff that's not really real, like it's exaggerated realities or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Flossie said, I agree. I worked with males for 27 years. Very different from working with females. Yes.
Very, yeah.
I mean, I'm very lucky. Don't get me wrong. I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm very lucky. I have some really wonderful lady friends who are super supportive. They're like my tribe of people. They want what's best for each other. And, but it's hard. I can see how it's hard for women to create those friendships because, I've met people who are in their 20s, 30s, and they talk about how difficult it is to make female friends.
I think the older you get, the harder it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's this rivalry with females. I think that's where it stems from. There's like this rivalry underneath that they don't really want you to know that you're their rival, right? So they're nice to you, but they're always in competition with you.
Yeah, and I think that's always pretty obvious when you think about the compliments people give you, because sometimes people can give you a compliment that on the surface might sound like a compliment, but it's kind of one of those kind of, backhanded sort of compliments. Yeah, that when you really think about it, it's like, okay. And actually, I don't have it on me, but I have a bracelet, and it says no comparison. And that was one of the things that I kind of always said to myself when I started running, because, I'm not competing against anyone. I'm not a pro athlete. This is just something that I'm doing for myself, and I'm in competition with myself every day.
Right.
I'm not in competition with anyone else. And I think in general, most runners are like that. Actually, I've found that most people I've met in the running community, they're super supportive of each other, and they're not really in competition with each other, unless they're like, whole different level than I am. But yeah, that is interesting, because you're right. A lot of people, it's a competition, be it professional.
Yeah. Who can look the best, who's gonna,
Yeah. And guys just don't have that with the looks and stuff. They really don't.
They don't care. No. And I think too, people who are in writing groups or in an MFA program, which I haven't done, but I can imagine the competition and the rivalry that you would feel in a situation like that. And I have done writing classes at university where, it's like only like maybe 8 or 10 people in the class, and you have to read your work out loud and comment on each other's work. And so there's always like this rivalry, because you want yours to be the best and you want everyone to like what you write, but you have to give nice comments to people even if you didn't really like what they read, or there's always this sort of backhanded and all this behind the scenes kind of competition that's going on with writing groups and people in an MFA for sure, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And how vulnerable that makes you, that you're reading something that you wrote that no one has read before, and you're reading it to this group of people, and they're going to tell you what they think. So there's a lot of vulnerability there. And I think Samantha was definitely feeling that. And I think they took advantage of her for that.
Yeah. So what did you make of the ending? What did you think? What did you think happened? Did you like how it ended?
I was okay with the ending. I kind of wish there was a little more concrete, factual stuff given. Like, did the bunnies really create men out of bunnies? And did Ava really, she didn't exist, but so was Samantha delusional when she was seeing what she saw with the feathers? And I'd kind of like to know, was it all just her imagination, or was some of it real, and what parts were real? And was there really any blood? Did any of that stuff really happen, or did she imagine all of it? You don't really know for sure how much of it was true. So I kind of wish there was a little more, just a little more known, what really did happen, because we're kind of left just guessing.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the ending. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit better at kind of accepting ambiguous endings, because I used to be the type of person, I'm like, no, I need to know exactly what happened and the facts of it. And, now I'm appreciating the mystery. I'm kind of appreciating that open-ended sort of thing. And for me, I felt like this book was experimental. I felt like all of the things that happened in the book were part of Samantha experimenting with her writing process. The fact that these bunnies, these men that were being created out of these ritualistic killings of real bunnies, we think. These men that were created in her imagination were always malformed. There was always something wrong with them. Like they would wear these weird gloves because their hands weren't fully formed, and you know, they couldn't do certain things. And I feel like the men were her pieces of work. So they were writing. That was what she was working on.
Yeah, I think that, but also I think each of the men kind of represented the work of the bunny that created that man, kind of thing. Like, yeah.
And I do feel like the bunnies, like I do feel like the bunnies were in on this for sure. I mean, I think they were taking Samantha in, and I think they were willing to play along with this weird creative process because, of course, they're bored and they're used to, you know, having plenty of money and having their work fawned all over. And I feel like they saw Samantha and her work as like a cool project. You know, this was like a cool experiment for them. And so I feel like that's why they were invested in it. Because I feel like probably at the end of the day, they may have been jealous of her work, which is why they kind of, you know, poo-pooed it in the workshops at school. So I feel like this was their opportunity, you know, bringing her into the fold and showing her their creative process. That was their way of seeing what her creative process was like. And I don't think they were prepared for just how extreme her creative process would be. For sure. Bossy said, I run a 13-minute mile and I have no desire to improve my pace. Like, you gotta do it for me. I mean, it's I don't go in there thinking I'm gonna win anything for sure. And a 13-mile pace, there's nothing wrong with that. Especially if you're doing high mileage, that's impressive. And this is what I always say, Flossie, when I'm out there and I see somebody running or even walking, I tell them we're beating everybody on the couch. You know,
you're beating me.
So, you know, it's all relative. You know, it's definitely relative. So,
and I think that's a good rule too for writers, like the writers in this book, not to compare what they're writing with everyone else's writing.
Well, and it's kind of like
the bunnies were.
We were talking about with like the rating system. Like that's one of the reasons we don't rate, because it's kind of hard to compare like certain types of work to other types of work. And with this, I feel like this work, it's kind of hard to compare it to anything because I don't really know what sort of category this fits in.
So something else, I'll bring this up, that she said in the interview, because I never would have made this connection myself if I hadn't seen or heard her say this in the interview, that she was kind of playing around with the Playboy bunny kind of idea, where like Hugh Hefner took these girls and made them into these bunny, you know, sex objects with the tails, and she did that in reverse, where the girls were creating bunnies or making men out of bunnies, kind of the reverse thing, right? And turning the men into sex objects for the girls.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild.
And I never would have thought of that, so I thought I'd just mention that in case no one else thought of it either.
And you know what's kind of interesting? I didn't really think the bunnies fit in with this university. I don't know. I felt like even though they seemed to be praised by all of their professors and everything, it seems to me like my preconceived notion of what a student in this sort of program would be was more like Jonah or more like, you know, Samantha. I don't know. They just seemed shallow. And, you know, so it was kind of interesting to see that because, you know, that was me, you know, making an assumption about these women based on what they dress like or what they look like. And it's funny because I'm sure people do the same thing about, you know, me and every other, you know, woman out there. You know, if you dress a certain way or look a certain way, you know, people assume things about you. So I kind of had to stop myself, and I'm like, you know what, who cares if they want to eat mini cupcakes? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. If they want to eat mini cupcakes and wear dresses that are super, you know, super frilly and fun. Like, let them do that, you know?
Yeah.
Now, Cape Codder had a question. Maybe you can shine some light on this.
I don't know. I don't know if it was really a stag or if Samantha injured them. I could never really figure that out.
You know, Kevin, I really felt like it was Samantha. Because, you know, the fact that she thought she had created this man out of a stag instead of a bunny, you know, obviously they didn't create men out of bunnies. You know, we find out that Ava is, you know, something she created in her imagination after looking at a swan. Poor Jonah, he was mud, which kind of was his personality. He was nothing, you know, kind of special. He was just kind of stable. He was just kind of there. So I felt like, yeah, this was something that went awry at one of their little, you know, meetings.
I think I lean towards it being Samantha as well because of the way they treated her after that.
Yeah.
Where they had the little ceremony.
Kind of her. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, that also made me think about that weird dynamic with one of her professors. So there was that professor, I don't even remember his name, but it was a professor who was supposed to be her advisor. And they started out being really close. He had kind of taken her under his wing and kind of thought that she was this, you know, burgeoning talent that he was going to, you know, help support at the university. And then all of a sudden, he cuts her off completely. He's like very abrupt with her and just very professional, but not trying to get too close. And I feel like he probably caught on to the fact that she was mentally unstable and that something was going on there with her. And I feel like that's why he distanced himself from her, because he sensed that, you know, danger there, that maybe she is volatile and maybe she has some stuff going on that, you know, I can't really help her with. I'm not really equipped to help, you know, I can help her with her writing, but I can't really help her if she's having some sort of psychosis or, you know, hallucinations, you know, because essentially that's what was happening. I mean, she was creating these characters that she made us feel like were real people, but we're not. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of thought, yeah, she probably is the one in the end who attacks the bunnies. Did Mona Wad say anything about her time at Brown in the interview? I found it interesting, the acknowledgement section. The author heaped praise on the people at the University of Denver, but she never mentioned Brown, which this college seemed to be based on.
The only thing I remember her saying about Brown was, I think, just about her dissertation being the fairy tales and the fear in fairy tales. I don't remember her saying much else about it. Other than she did say her thesis for it was her first book, 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl.
Okay. Yeah. Have you read that one, Shannon?
No,
I haven't either. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting when Kevin pointed that out in the group chat, because, you know, obviously Brown would definitely fit into, you know, this kind of Northeastern Ivy League sort of, you know, school. And, you know, the fact that she went there and did not mention them, I don't know, that kind of tells me all I need to know, I suppose, about her experience.
She did say, she said that while she was doing her MFA, she kind of was like observing everything and people's behaviors and thought, you know, this is really good material for a horror / fairy tale. So apparently she did get the ideas from that, but she didn't say specifically, you know.
Very interesting. I'm going to actually flip around and show, I'm actually at my alma mater. This is the lovely Longwood University, and that is the Rotunda. But this school is just absolutely gorgeous. I had such a great experience here. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it prompted me to think of horror novels. So that kind of
yeah,
makes you
but I
think
think
a little bit about.
she was referring specifically to the MFA program.
Yeah,
and
that's
all of that.
interesting.
Yeah.
You wonder what sort of people she met, and if any of them were like the bunnies or like Samantha or and you wonder if anyone she went to school with read it and wondered the same thing. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, I could definitely see, schools are their own little islands, and there are cultures that really are created at these schools, little kind of microcosms of society, and they have their own traditions and their own sort of ways of doing things. So yeah, I can totally see that an elite program might have some very strange things going on and some kind of colorful people, we'll say. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. So apparently this has been optioned for TV as well. So they're going to create a series.
Wow.
Like several seasons.
I cannot imagine what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I know. Like, how are they going to blow up bunnies? I guess there'll be some digital tricks going on there, but
yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting, and I wonder this about Brown. I've never been to that area, so I don't know. Like in the book, Samantha talks about how beautiful, the campus was. It seems very idyllic, but on the fringes of the campus, there's like all this crime. They talk about like a serial killer being on the loose and how dangerous it was to walk at night. And so, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too, because, you have some of these very sheltered people on this campus, and then yet like steps away from where they are, you have these, crime waves. These very dangerous things happening. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I've
never
like
really.
The school is kind of like a microcosm of the bigger city or whatever. This is their little clique and their little group of MFA students and art students, and the rest of it is kind of almost another world. Like it's steps away, but it's not their reality, kind of.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, Kevin said that's true. There's some bad parts of Providence and several similar campuses like that around New England. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because here in Virginia, like VCU, that's in the city of Richmond. And yeah, I mean, there are some bad parts of that city for sure. And that campus just kind of sprawls out across the city. So it's kind of intermeshed. Like, going to VCU, like there's going to be some crime because you're in the middle of downtown Richmond. And that's just kind of, the campus is kind of absorbed by the city. So it's kind of interesting to think like you've got this little pocket of, safety and surrounding it, a whole different world, really. World.
Yeah.
But honestly, to me, I don't know, the campus seemed kind of scary because, with the one scene where the janitor comes in and finds Samantha tied up.
Yeah.
And he basically makes this comment like, you kids and your experimental art, like, I'm just sick of this. Like, I'm sick of cleaning up your messes from these crazy things you do. Like, he didn't seem shocked at all by the fact that he had just found like a student bound and
not concerned. No
not concerned at all. So like that's a little bit more disconcerting to me than like just being in a city where there's like there's crime. You're kind of a little more alert, to be on a campus where not only is that stuff not even blinked at, but it's like encouraged. Because the professors were really encouraging a lot of this weird behavior. And, I would imagine it's not quite that extreme, but you wonder at Brown what sort of like experimental like work did they do there?
It makes me want to sign up to go there, and find out.
Yeah. Look, you sign up and you tell us about it. You write a book about it.
Sign up to do the MFA program and just see what happens.
See what happens, yeah. But yeah, this if this book was the product of that, I feel like it was worth it because it was super interesting. It was fun. It was not like one of my favorite books of all time, but it's definitely one that's I think worth a read.
And she talked about Mean Girls, which I haven't seen, but obviously from the title I can, figure out what it's about. And she said she was watching a lot of that type of thing while she was writing this, like Mean Girls, and she mentioned something called Heathers, which I'm not familiar with. And Alice in Wonderland she mentioned too. So like the white bunny from Alice in Wonderland kind of was part of her imagining for this whole thing, and how, surreal Alice's experiences were.
Yeah. I can definitely see that.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting that she kind of pulled all of these things together.
Yeah, because it's definitely you really see some kind of modern influence, like horror movie, kind of cult movie, pop culture sort of influence in it for sure. Yeah, now that you say that about like Mean Girls and Heathers, like I can totally see that in this book.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Were there any other things that you wanted to talk about, Shannon, about the book or about?
I think we pretty much covered everything. I think Samantha's loneliness had a lot to do with this as well. Like her being so lonely that she had to create and invent this best friend for herself. It's kind of sad that you're that lonely, that you have to have an imaginary friend in your 20s,
And, with Ava, I know she was a lot of people's favorite character because she was like spontaneous and cool and fun, and she didn't really seem to care what people thought about her. But I also thought that relationship was very codependent and dysfunctional. I did not think that was a healthy relationship at all. So the fact that even imagining a relationship with someone, Samantha couldn't create a healthy one. Like, she doesn't really know, I guess, what that would look like, or maybe that's not really part of the creative process. Like, what's the point of having a healthy relationship doesn't make for good writing, I suppose.
Exactly.
So, you need to have that drama, the trials, the tribulation, like all of that is part of, I guess, creating good drama and good stories. So
exactly.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Definitely a wild ride. If you're out there and you're looking for something different, I can assure you this fits the bill. You've never read anything quite like it. And I would say it's probably not for everyone. Poor Mark, he dipped out after 2 chapters. He's like, I can't. Maybe I'll come back to it at some point, but I can't get on board with this. He just couldn't get into it, and I can definitely see that.
I might have done that, except my curiosity was like, no, this is like a Christmas present under the tree, and you just have to know what's inside. Like this book was like that. It's like, I have to know what is going on here.
And some people might think, and I could see this too, that at the end it was kind of like a cop out, kind of like an easy out to say, oh, she just imagined all of this. But knowing
that was the point. That was the whole point.
See that to me, I was okay with that because it was experimental. This was all part of the process. And when you realized that all of this was her creating her final writing piece for graduation, because, throughout the book, we don't see or hear much about her writing. She goes through periods where, Kevin was saying she's got writer's block and, she has her advisor saying, are you working on something? Because I need to see it. Like, I haven't seen anything. Are you actually working?
I think she was working on it, but in her head, it was real.
Yes.
So all of this stuff that was happening was what she was writing, but she didn't realize she was writing it and making it up. She was thinking, I'm not
She was
writing, I'm
living
just
it.
sitting,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here doodling while Ava draws pictures. But really, she was writing. She was writing about Ava drawing pictures or whatever. So it's almost like she didn't even realize that she was on autopilot or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was only after she realized that all of this was made up that we then hear people say, "Oh man, I really liked your writing. That final piece you wrote was awesome." You know, so it's like, yeah, you're right. She thought this was really happening, and these were things she was living out, but she wasn't actually living them out. She was writing it.
She was writing it. Yeah, and she was so lost in her imagination, and I think the loneliness had a lot to do with that, because she didn't really have a life outside of her imagination.
Yeah, I worry what happened to that character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she probably created some other pretty cool stuff, but she may have driven herself just, you know.
She might end up in an institution at some point.
Yeah, she may have driven herself crazy doing it, but she definitely.
And I think that was part of the point too that the author was making, you know, the danger of living in your imagination all the time and never coming out of it.
Very true. Very true.
And like with method actors, if they're playing like a character, you know, a bad character that's killing people, you know, wait for that to go by. You get method actors that, you know, they can't go home until they're finished with this movie that they're doing, because they are this character that whole 3 months or whatever it is. And the danger in that, if you're playing somebody like some American Psycho or like a Hannibal Lecter type character, right? And how dangerous that could be if you don't put your imagination and your art and creativity aside and go back to reality.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for agreeing to talk about this book with me, because I know this was a super weird one. And I was like, when we first started reading it, I was like, oh gosh, I pray that Shannon doesn't jump ship. But I think you were the perfect person to read this with. Really, with all of your writing and your you know, your music biz background, I think you had a different take on it and could see it with a different set of eyes. So I appreciate you reading it with me and discussing it.
I appreciate you asking me to. I thought it was great. I mean, it's not the best book I've ever read, but I think it was certainly original and imaginative and had a lot of good kind of messages for us, you know, about writing and artistic imagination and all of that.
For sure. Well, thank you to everyone who tuned in or will watch this at a later time. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Hopefully we'll do this again, Shannon.
Absolutely.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Right.